Imagine, for a second, packing up everything you own, saying goodbye to every single person you know, and just leaving, setting out on this massive, dangerous journey with your small children, all for a future you can only dream about. Well, back in the spring of 1856, that's exactly what one family did. They gambled everything on a new start in America. This is their story. The distance they had to go was just staggering: 4,000 miles. And you have to remember, this is an era with no planes, no cars, no modern highways. This was a journey over mountains, across a massive ocean, and then halfway across a continent. All of it done the hard way. And this whole thing, it took 7 weeks. I mean, think about that. That's nearly 2 months of nonstop movement, of total uncertainty, of hardship, bouncing from carts to ships to steamboats. And every single stage of the journey brought its own new set of dangers. But this is so much more than just a travelogue. It's this deeply personal story about what it takes to migrate. It's the story of one family's unbelievable strength, set against this huge historical moment of people leaving it all behind to build new lives in the American heartland. So who were the people at the heart of this incredible undertaking? Okay, let's meet the Lelands. All right, so here's the family. You've got Sjur, the father, and he's 51 years old. I mean, that is not a young man to be starting your entire life over. His wife, Brita, was 37. But now get this, look at the ages of their kids. Torger was only 6, Ola was 4, and little Matthias was just 2. They were taking 3 toddlers on one of the most dangerous journeys you could possibly imagine. Their journey wasn't just one long trip. It was a series of 5 totally distinct, really demanding stages. First, they had to trek through the mountains of Norway. Then came the terrifying Atlantic crossing. After that, a complicated 1,000-mile journey across the Great Lakes. Then a final push by train and wagon. And only then could they finally start their new life in Wisconsin. The journey didn't really begin with that first step forward. It actually began with the heartbreaking process of letting go. It started with saying goodbye, knowing it was forever. Just try to wrap your head around the weight of that choice. On one side, you have everything they've ever known: their farm, their friends and family, their language, their whole culture. And on the other side, only what they could physically carry. Really, the most important thing they packed wasn't an object at all. It was hope. And there was this absolute finality to it. When Britta said goodbye to her parents and her sisters, she knew. She knew she was almost certainly never, ever going to see them again. This wasn't just a trip. This was a complete departure from their world. And get this, even getting to the port was an ordeal. It was a 65-mile trip through the mountains that took up to 4 days. With a 2-year-old walking part of the way, the pace was just painfully slow, and they were facing the real threat of late spring snow in the mountains. The journey had barely even started, and it was already a major test of their endurance. So, after they conquered the mountains, the family had to face the most dangerous, most grueling phase of their entire journey, crossing the vast and unforgiving Atlantic Ocean. They boarded a sailing ship called the Hebe, and like pretty much all immigrants back then, they traveled in steerage. It was the cheapest way to get across the ocean, but that word, cheap, came at a huge human cost. So what exactly was steerage? Well, it was the absolute lowest part of the ship, a cargo hold, really, that was converted for passengers. It had almost no light, no fresh air, no sanitation. It was, for all intents and purposes, human cargo space. Life down there, it was a complete sensory nightmare. Just try to picture it. You're crammed into these wooden bunks with dozens of other families with zero privacy. The air was thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, of sickness, of bilge water. Your drinking water was rationed, and seasickness was just constant. It was a truly miserable, dehumanizing experience. And the total space they were given? 36 square feet. That's it. A tiny 6-by-6-foot area for a family of 5. That's where they had to eat, sleep, and just exist for weeks on end. It's almost impossible to even comprehend that level of confinement. But here's the thing. Amidst all this misery, the Lelands got one incredible break, a huge stroke of luck. A typical crossing back then took 6 to 8 weeks. The Hebe made it in just 3. This ridiculously fast journey probably saved their lives, helping them avoid the deadly diseases that so often ripped through these ships. But arriving in Quebec didn't mean they were done. Oh, not even close. After surviving the ocean, they still had a complex, exhausting, 1,000-mile journey across North America ahead of them. I mean, just look at this logistical puzzle. They went upriver by steamboat, then had to switch to these slow-moving canal boats pulled by mules. Then they got back onto steamboats to cross the Great Lakes. And finally, they used a combination of the brand new railroad and a simple wagon. It was just this relentless patchwork journey. So while this is the Leland's personal story, you got to remember, it was also a universal one. They were just one family in this massive wave of immigration, all of them following the same incredibly difficult path to build new towns and communities all over the Midwest. They were literally transforming the country, one family at a time. And then it happened. After 7 weeks, after 4,000 miles, they made it. The final mile was done. Can you just imagine the mix of emotions? The overwhelming relief, the pure exhaustion, and that daunting uncertainty of just standing on a piece of land with nothing but your own 2 hands and the will to build a new life from scratch. But their new life started with this unbelievable emotional whiplash. In June, they arrive. That fall, Sjur manages to build them a home right before winter sets in, a huge success. But that very same fall, tragedy strikes. Little Matthias, the toddler who survived the entire 4,000-mile journey, died. He was 3. And yet, right in the middle of that grief, there was new hope. Their daughter, Ingeborg, was born in September, their first American child. When you really look at it, it was this profound, almost unthinkable trade-off. The cost was immense. The life of their youngest son, the family they'd never see again, the homeland they left behind forever. But the promise was just as real. A new daughter, born in a new country, a new community, and a new home that they built with their own hands on their own land. So in the end, you see, this journey was never just about moving from one point on a map to another. It was a complete transformation. It was a trial by fire that reshaped who they were and forged their future as a new American family. And their story leaves us with this powerful question, one that echoes through history and is still so relevant today. What does it actually take? What level of courage, what level of hope, or maybe desperation, does it take to leave behind everything you know and everyone you love for this simple promise of a life you can only imagine?